All in the Family is the 19th episode of the second season of Wings. This is a pretty good episode. We do have some really great moments, and I think Bryan in particular was really interesting. There was one part of it that I feel like I was left wanting more. Not insofar as it was so amazing I wanted more, but it felt unfinished. And I will talk about that in a moment. There will be spoilers, of course, from now, as I talk about what happens in the episode. I don't have too many extensive thoughts, but that doesn't mean that I didn't like it. It just means that I didn't write down that much as I was watching it. There weren't any quotes or anything that I wanted to share. We have three parts of the narrative. One, the smallest part, but actually quite delightful, is the fact that Roy needs glasses. He's not really wanting to admit this, and I kind of like the way they handled that part of the episode and Lowell's involvement there as well. It was pretty good fun. Helen asks Joe for the number of a florist that he used because she needs to send some flowers, and Joe tells her the address book is in his drawer. She goes to get it, and then immediately a thought occurs to him and he snatches it out of her hand. And we do get a bit of suspense here. We don't immediately find out what was in that address book that he didn't want her to see. And I was very curious about that. And I do like the pacing there. It took us a little bit longer to find out. Helen also indicated that there was something in her handbag that she didn't want Joe to see. And we have some suspense there as well. But I feel like that part was a bit of a letdown. And I'll talk more about that in a moment. But it turns out that Joe had the name of Nancy Ferguson on the same page as the florist. Of course, it would be under F. And it's just somebody he dated before he and Helen were together, and he didn't want her to know about that. I feel like Joe didn't need to worry. I think it's clear that most people, at least once you get to a certain age, have had past relationships. That's not necessarily something that needs to be hidden. And Helen was understandably very cool about it. She wasn't bothered. It turns out that Helen was just teasing Joe and that there actually wasn't anything in her bag that she was trying to hide from him. So she empties her bag out on the counter, and then there's something that she didn't realise was still in there. And she then runs off away from Joe. And I'm 99% sure that she is still teasing him. I'm pretty sure that she's still just doing it to wind him up. But the character's performance, I don't mean Crystal Bernard's performance, but the way the character acted, I don't think it's very clear whether she was faking it or not, or whether it is actually something she was trying to hide. I don't think it came across very clear in the way that Helen responded to this. So I'm not 100% certain that she was still messing with him, but I'm so close to being sure that she was, just because if she wasn't, that part felt really underdeveloped. Because if she wasn't messing with him, what on earth was it? What was in her bag? We never, we don't get enough answers for this. I want to know more. So that's the bit that I feel like wasn't done as well as it could have been, but not enough that I didn't enjoy the episode. Then we come to Bryan. Bryan hits on this woman at the airport, and then the next thing we know, he also has a date with Kenny's mother. He doesn't realise initially that it's Kenny's mother, and then he finds out, and he goes on the date with her, and it doesn't go well. In his eyes, it doesn't go well. And he doesn't want to go on a date with her again. And he tells Kenny this. He's not nasty about it. He doesn't badmouth his mother or anything like that. I think he had a very sensible approach. But Kenny was hurt by this, because why would Bryan not want to go on another date with his mother? And Bryan ends up driving to the drive-thru where Kenny also works. And I like the fact that we have quite a serious moment, but there's plenty of comedy in this. For example, Kenny is dressed as a pirate, which definitely helps to show that while there are some serious aspects to the conversation that follows, it's still meant to be relatively lighthearted. And Bryan does a brilliant Popeye impression. I have to say, it's pretty great. And he tells Kenny he's sorry about this, and Kenny asks him why. Why will you not go out with her? Why do all of these men keep dating her and then never going out with her again? And Bryan does a great thing, because he could have, in that moment, said, well, actually, it's because of all of these reasons why I don't want to date her again. But actually, he decides to just say, it's him. It's Bryan's fault. And I think that was the right way to approach the situation. Certainly the kind and gentle way. There was nothing to be gained by telling Kenny that his mother was not that nice to be around. absolutely nothing to be gained at all. So I think that was the right approach. Maybe somebody should tell his mother why she's maybe not having much luck. If she's really not necessarily a pleasant person to be around, but I don't think that was Bryan's place. So I think everything was handled really well by Bryan, and ultimately it was a nice way to conclude that part of the story. So it's definitely not a bad episode. There is nothing about All in the Family that didn't work very well, apart from maybe Helen and the purse. If she was still teasing Joe, I think maybe it could have been a bit more obvious. But maybe it's just me. Maybe it's really obvious to everybody else, and I'm just not picking up on that. If she wasn't teasing Joe, then that part of it definitely wasn't concluded very well. But as I said, I'm leaning towards her still teasing Joe. But maybe it's obvious to everybody else. I don't know. Feel free to let me know your thoughts. It's probably never going to be my favourite episode, but in general, All in the Family definitely has some really good moments.